during communion, I was reminded of when Jillian and I went to South Padre, just took the family, went down and hung out for a weekend. And Sunday came along and we went to, I think it was the Island Baptist Church, to go worship. And their communion was, much like ours. The guy came up and he said a few words. They said a prayer, and the three men walked out and they passed out the bread. Well, of course, like as we usually do, we break off our bread, and it was small little squares, already remade squares. And so we took one, I took mine, Jillian took hers. Then the men went back up and they said, "In Him we thank." And then they all ate, and we were just like, "Oh, we didn't have anything to eat." I thought that was pretty funny, and we were embarrassed. But if today, Thanksgiving's right around the corner. So of course, we're going to be talking about Thanksgiving in some way or some form or some fashion. But a lot of us, our Thanksgivings, we sit around the table and we share the meal and we share the company with family and with friends, and we play the games, and we get that great feeling of unbuttoning our pants and taking a nap on the couch. Those are all good things. Those are all great things, but sometimes I wonder, did we lose something in our Thanksgiving from the past? Because if we look at the past, if we look at 1620, when those pilgrims came over in the Mayflower, and they landed in Massachusetts in November, and they were stuck there in that ship for all winter. They couldn't get out. For some miracle, they only lost one person on the travel over, and it took them 66 days to get over. They only lost one person, a young boy who was already ill when they left. And but by the time, and then when they got to the mainland, and by the time they got off in March, only half of them remained. So they were sitting there in that cold ship, all huddled together for warmth, passing around diseases and sicknesses, and just the misery they felt. They finally get out, and then the Native Americans, they come out and they help them, and they welcome them in English. And they show them how to cultivate corn, and they show them how to hunt in this wildlife. They show them what plants to stay away from. They show them how to live and survive this new world. And by the time the harvest comes, they have an abundance of food. And they have something to be thankful for this time, because they can remember where they were last year, stuck in the ship, dying. And now here they are living an abundant life. They're celebrating the harvest that they were getting. And that's what I want to take our point on is, as we look back on 2020, as we're thankful for everything we've been given, are we thankful for the harvest we put ourselves into? Are we thankful for the labor of our hands? Did we do the Lord's work this year? Where are we sowing the fields? Where are we tending the soil? Where are we planting the seeds? As we celebrate the harvest and we celebrate the fruits of our labor, did we actually do those things? The Pilgrim Chronicler, Edward Winslow, wrote this: "Our harvest being gotten in, our governor sent 4 men on fowling, so that we might have a special manner to rejoice together. And after he had gathered the fruits of our labors, they 4 in one day killed as much fowl as with little help besides, served the company almost a week, at which time, amongst other recreations, we exercised our arms, many of the Indians coming amongst us, and amongst the rest their greatest king, with some 90 men, whom for 3 days we entertained and feasted. And they went out and killed 5 deer, which they brought to the plantation and bestowed on our governor, and upon the captain and others. This, though, has not always been so plentiful as it was at this time with us. Yet by the goodness of God, we are so far from want. We often wish ye partakers of our plenty." Sometimes I was just thinking about that. Sometimes we lose sight of what a part of this holiday means is this harvest. And we know it's not an earthly harvest I'm talking about. It's this spiritual harvest, this heavenly harvest that we come to learn through Matthew and through Revelation. And I'll read you those scriptures right now. Matthew 13, starting in verse 24, Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was sleeping, the enemy came and sowed the weeds among the wheat, and went away. And when the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, did you sow good seed in your field? Then where did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go out and pull them up?" "No," he answered, "because while you're pulling the weeds, you might uproot the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I'll tell you, the harvesters first collect the weeds, tie them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat and bring them into my barn." And then as we go further down, we skip over the parable of the mustard seed, we get into the explanation. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He answered, "The one who sowed the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed stands for the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one. And the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the harvesters are the angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." And lastly, if we flip on over to Revelations 14, starting chapter 14, verse 14. I can get it. It's the same numbers. Revelation 14, this is a revelation to John. "I looked, and there before me was a white cloud, and seated on the white cloud was one like the Son of Man, with a crown of gold on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. Another angel came out of the temple and called in a loud voice to him who was sitting on the cloud, 'Take your sickle and reap, because the time to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is ripe.' So he who was seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven. He too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel who had charge of the fire came from the altar and called in a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, 'Take your sharp sickle and gather the cluster of grapes from the earth's vines, because its grapes are ripe.' The angel swung his sickle on the earth, gathered its grapes, and threw them into the great winepress of God's wrath. They were trampled in the winepress outside the city, and blood flowed out of the press, rising as high as horses' bridles for a distance of 16,000 stadia." And so, pretty clearly, there will be a harvest. God will send his angels to harvest the earth. And we are a part of this wheat. Or we want to be a part of this wheat. We want to be part of the good seed that comes. That's not our only charge, is to be the good seed. Jesus also called and said in Matthew 8, when all the people are coming to him sick and ill and in desperate need, he said, "Look, the harvest is plenty, but the workers are few." We have a dual purpose here in life. We are to be wheat, but we're also to be workers of the field. And I kind of struggled with this a little bit as I was studying. I was like, well, are some of us the workers and some of us just the wheat? But then I started to think about the Bible class that I was teaching on, and about this abundant life. And about thinking, okay, I'm supposed to model my life after Jesus. And we see that here Jesus was the one going out and sowing good seed. And we know that not all of us are the hand or the foot or the mouth. We all have different jobs in this world. We all have different talents in this world. But the one thing we all have in common is that we sow good seed. If our life reflects that, if our life reflects the good seed, if our life reflects the wheat, then we will sow that. And when we look back on this time of the harvest, when we look back on 2020, we can see that labor. We can see, because you have to be purposeful in living this life. We saw that. We saw that when you are trying to live this abundant life, or if we are trying to live the way Jesus taught us how to live, that we are to bear good fruit, to abide in the vine, to obey His commands and obey it in love and find that love through knowledge. And if we have this cascading effect, if we pull all these things together, our life then reflects Jesus' life. Therefore, no matter what job you are, no matter if you are the evangelist, one going out into the foreign countries to preach, or maybe you're just someone just helping somebody on the corner, or maybe it's just the way you present yourself at work, you're still sowing good seed. Your life is still reflecting the gospel. So when we think back of 2020, we think back as we celebrate this Thanksgiving and we're having family and friends over, can we see the labor of our hands? Do we see the work? Are we tending the fields out there? Because that's our charge. We're charged to tend the fields and to make sure the wheat grows and to make sure the soil stays good, also in our lives, but those around us. So that's my lesson for today is as you come to your Thanksgiving meal, as you sit around with families and share, just take a minute to reflect on yourself and to reflect on the harvest that you're committing to. And what harvest are you bringing forth? Are you bringing forth the wheat? Are you sowing the seeds of the weeds? Thank you.